Welcome, everyone. Today, we will explore an inspiring story about unlocking English fluency the smart way. This story is not just about learning a language, it is about discovering a better approach to growth, confidence, and communication. Many people believe that becoming fluent in English requires special talent, expensive courses, or years of difficult study. However, this story teaches us that fluency comes from consistency, smart learning methods, and the courage to keep moving forward even when progress seems slow. Through this story, you will learn that success in English is not about perfection. It is about daily improvement, patience, and using the language in meaningful ways. Let us begin. There was once a young person who dreamed of speaking English fluently. Every day, this person watched videos of confident speakers, listened to interviews, and admired people who could express their thoughts clearly in English. The dream was simple: to speak naturally, understand conversations easily, and communicate with people from different parts of the world. But there was one problem. Despite studying English for years in school, speaking the language felt difficult. Grammar rules were confusing, vocabulary was forgotten quickly, and every attempt to speak created nervousness. Whenever there was an opportunity to speak English, fear appeared. The fear of making mistakes became stronger than the desire to learn. As a result, progress remained slow and confidence continued to decrease. One day, while searching for ways to improve, this person noticed something interesting. Many fluent speakers did not spend all their time memorizing grammar books. Instead, they spent a lot of time listening, reading, and using the language naturally. They treated English as a communication tool rather than a school subject. This idea felt different. Until then, learning English had always meant studying rules, completing exercises, and worrying about errors. The possibility of learning through stories, conversations, and daily practice seemed much more enjoyable. Curious about this new approach, the person decided to try something different. The first step was simple. Every morning, instead of opening a grammar book, the learner began reading short English stories. At first, understanding was difficult. Many words were unfamiliar, and sentences seemed complicated. However, instead of stopping whenever a new word appeared, the learner focused on understanding the overall meaning. Little by little, patterns started to become familiar. Common expressions appeared repeatedly. Useful vocabulary naturally entered memory without forced memorization. The stories were interesting, and because they were enjoyable, learning no longer felt like a burden. For the first time, English study became something to look forward to rather than something to avoid. As weeks passed, another habit was added. The learner started listening to English audio every day. Sometimes it was a story, sometimes a podcast, and sometimes a motivational speech. In the beginning, many sentences sounded too fast. It seemed impossible to understand everything. However, instead of becoming frustrated, the learner focused on catching key words and general ideas. Day after day, the ears became more familiar with English sounds. Words that once seemed unclear became recognizable. Sentences that previously sounded like a blur slowly became understandable. The learner realized that listening was not about understanding every word immediately. It was about training the brain to become comfortable with the language. A few months later, the learner discovered another smart strategy. Instead of trying to memorize hundreds of random vocabulary words, useful phrases were learned in context. For example, rather than learning individual words separately, complete expressions were practiced. These phrases appeared in stories and conversations, making them easier to remember. Soon, speaking became smoother because the learner was no longer building every sentence word by word. Familiar phrases could be used naturally. This approach saved time, reduced stress, and improved confidence significantly. Even with these improvements, speaking remained the biggest challenge. The learner still worried about making mistakes. One evening, while reflecting on progress, an important realization appeared. Every fluent speaker had once been a beginner. Every expert had made countless mistakes during the learning process. Waiting for perfect English before speaking was like waiting for perfect weather before leaving home. The perfect moment would never arrive. The learner decided to speak anyway. At first, conversations were short and simple. Mistakes happened frequently. Sometimes words were forgotten, and sometimes sentences sounded awkward. Yet something surprising occurred. Communication still happened. People understood the message even when grammar was not perfect. This experience changed everything. The learner stopped treating mistakes as failures and started viewing them as lessons. Every error revealed something new to improve. Every conversation provided valuable practice. Confidence slowly replaced fear. Instead of asking, "What if I make a mistake?" the learner began asking, "What can I learn from this conversation?" This small change in mindset created a huge difference. English was no longer an exam to pass. It became a skill to develop through experience. As the months turned into a year, remarkable progress became visible. Reading became easier. Listening required less effort. Speaking felt more natural. The learner could discuss daily topics, share opinions, and participate in conversations without constant hesitation. Friends and family noticed the improvement. Some even asked for advice on learning English. When they asked about secret techniques or special courses, the learner smiled and shared a simple truth. There was no secret shortcut. The smart way was to make English part of daily life. Reading stories, listening regularly, learning phrases in context, and practicing without fear had produced results that traditional memorization alone could not achieve. One of the most valuable lessons came from consistency. There were many days when motivation was low. Some days were busy, and some days progress seemed invisible. However, the learner continued taking small steps. Even 15 or 20 minutes of daily practice added up over time. Looking back, it became clear that success was not created by a few extraordinary study sessions. It was built through hundreds of ordinary days of effort. Small actions, repeated consistently, created extraordinary results. Another important lesson involved patience. In the beginning, the learner expected rapid improvement. When progress appeared slow, disappointment often followed. Over time, however, it became obvious that language learning is similar to planting a tree. Growth happens beneath the surface before it becomes visible above the ground. Every story read, every conversation attempted, and every minute spent listening contributed to future fluency. Even when results could not be seen immediately, learning was taking place. Patience allowed the learner to continue moving forward without becoming discouraged. Eventually, English became more than a subject. It became a bridge to new opportunities, friendships, knowledge, and experiences. The learner could understand books, videos, and conversations that were once inaccessible. Confidence increased not only in language skills but also in other areas of life. Learning English successfully proved that difficult goals could be achieved through consistent effort and smart strategies. The journey transformed both communication skills and personal growth. Years later, when reflecting on the entire experience, the learner realized that fluency had not arrived through a single breakthrough moment. It had arrived quietly through daily habits. Every story read, every podcast heard, every phrase practiced, and every mistake accepted had contributed to success. The smart way to learn English was not about working harder. It was about working smarter. It was about enjoying the process, staying consistent, and focusing on communication rather than perfection. What can we learn from this story? The lesson is clear and powerful. English fluency is not reserved for gifted people. Anyone can improve by using smart learning methods. Read stories regularly, listen to English every day, learn useful phrases in context, and practice speaking without fear of mistakes. Do not wait until your English is perfect before using it. Progress comes through action. Small daily efforts create big long-term results. Most importantly, trust the process. Every minute of practice matters, even when improvement seems slow. Fluency is not achieved overnight, but with patience, consistency, and the right approach, it becomes possible for anyone. Unlock English fluency the smart way, and you may discover that the journey itself is just as rewarding as the destination.